Hello, my name is Kate Crane. You might have seen me in Craft Stamper magazine or even in some of the American art publications. I'm a self-taught mixed media artist with a passion for art journaling. I'm going to show you a few hints and tips from how to get started right from a blank page, how to get colour onto your pages. So, what is an art journal? On the surface, an art journal is a colourful visual diary, but it's much more than that. It's a place to play and experiment, to try new techniques, somewhere to document your daily happenings or to share your hopes and dreams. It's a great place to just get things off your chest. You can give yourself permission to do what you like, say what you like, to get in touch with your innermost self, because your art journal is just for you. Remember, there are no mistakes in art. You will find things that you like to do and things that you don't. Play and experiment. That's what a journal is for. Take a look at some of the art journaling that's out there on the World Wide Web. There's some really inspirational art going on that people so willingly share on their blogs, on YouTube and photo sharing sites. Remember though, there's no joy in directly copying. However, it's good to try things that others do because that's how you learn. And then you will find that you want to tweak it and change it, and before you know it, you will have developed your own style. There are so many different journaling styles, and there's no right or wrong, and no one person can explain the whole process in total. I can show you the way I do things, but other journalers will have completely different ideas. You can take the bits that you like and mix and match them with other things that you like to do. Once you get going in your art journal, you can start to add anything. Photos, clothing, tickets, anything goes. It's your journal, your diary, your thoughts, whatever you want it to be. Anything goes. So, let's get creating. So, what do you need to get started? As soon as you have something to put colour on the page, you can start journaling. But of course, as time goes on, you'll want to try new things and your collection is likely to grow. You certainly don't need all of the things I'm about to show you, but you will want to try some of them. We're going to start by looking at journals themselves. Moleskine journals are really popular with mixed media artists, although they do come in different paper weights and shapes and sizes. This is a soft cover Moleskine, and the pages are fairly thin. So this is okay for felt tips and sketching and so on, and it won't really take acrylic paints. Now this is a Moleskine sketchbook. You can tell by the lilac band here, and it actually says a Moleskine sketchbook on the cover. These have thicker pages and are better for mixed media work. They will take gel mediums and paints and so on, and they stand up to all that abuse really well. Again, they come in different sizes, right up to a larger size, like this. But of course you can journal in anything. And this one is a really cheap sketchbook that I covered myself, and this is great for mopping up spare inks and so on that you might have, and literally mopping up spills and so on, and then you can come back and work on those. This tiny little notebook. This one was given to me by my niece, and it has lilac pages, but these pages can be stuck together and is great for adding paints and so on. This is a very old vintage time book. Fragile pages, but it can still work sensitively on these. You can still create pages even inside something like that. This was a lovely handmade leather-bound journal that I got hold of. And again, this is a nice size for working, especially for journals on the go. Good for a travel journal, that size. And of course, you can make a journal yourself from scratch. This one was made by gluing newspaper sheets together and then binding together with book rings. So it was all loose pages which were then bound together. So now we know what we're going to journal in, let's have a look at the paints that we're going to use. Let's start by looking at acrylic paints. One of the nice things about acrylic paints is that they are very forgiving to work with. They layer up really well, especially if they are semi-translucent, which all of these ones are. They're good for stenciling, splatting, layering, and if it all goes horribly wrong, the nice thing about acrylics is you can paint over and start again. Now, paints that are semi-translucent means that they let the colours underneath shine through, and that's what makes them so nice for layering. They blend well. And you get really good, strong paint coverage with acrylic paints. Golden fluids here. These are acrylic paints, but they are the consistency of single cream, which is good for journaling because they stay nice and thin on the page. Your journal doesn't get too bulky. And again, these are semi-translucent. And one of the things on the bottle you'll see is here they paint the paint on, so you can see how translucent it is. Some of them are more translucent than others. See, they go on really nicely, and again, semi-translucent and blend really well. So those are acrylics. Of course, you may already have watercolours that you can paint with. Watercolours, you can't get quite the same depth of colour, but a little palette like this is great for journaling on the go. So if you're going away somewhere, you want a little palette with you so you can keep journaling, and it's kind of instant. You've got a built-in palette usually. And you still get a good range of bright colours. You only need a basic set of colours to get started, because from a basic set of colours you can achieve a lot of different colours, but like in any hobby, once you get started your collection will probably grow and grow. Now let's have a look at ink sprays. There's many different ink sprays on the market. Some of them dry to a matte finish, some have added mica and dry with a sheen. I'm going to show you this one first of all. This is a Ranger Colour Wash. You can just use them for colouring a background like that. Always useful to have kitchen roll for blotting your ink sprays. It can also be used to layer up with stencils. And you also have the reverse of the stencil, so 2 patterns in one. And you can build up some lovely effects like that. These ones are delusions. Some of these dry to a matte finish. These ones come in really super bright colours. And some of these also have added mica. You can usually see the mica in the bottle of an ink spray. Needs a good shake. And you can have effects like this. And you can allow ink to dribble down, create patterns. And you can also remove the lid and create a splat as well. And you can start to use all of these techniques together to build up some really vibrant backgrounds. Ink sprays are also great for using on top of a good base layer of acrylic paint. They work really, really well together. Now, you've just seen me use a stencil, but here are a few more to have a look at. Now, some of these stencils are made especially for the craft market, such as these ones by Crafters Workshop. And this one by Mary Beth Shaw. But some things you're just as likely to find in your local stationery shop, such as this metric circles template. And even something like this, a simple alphabet template. Stencils are really useful to have in your collection. They're great for building up layers in your work. You can use them with inks, with paints, and even with things like moulding paste. Next, we're going to have a look at pens. Art journalers are always on the lookout for the perfect pen for journaling, but I don't think it really exists. Different pens are great for different surfaces, so here's a few, and I've built up quite a collection now as I've tried things out as I've gone along. I often like to use these Faber-Castell Pit Pens for when I'm actually writing and journaling on my pages. This is a plain black in a superfine tip. You can see that really is a superfine tip and it's lovely for writing with. It writes on most surfaces, and they also come in colour as a brush tip, but unlike other felt tips, these contain India ink. And they will write on top of acrylic, so you can use these to add colour to your journaling on top of your acrylic painted pages. Other pens that might be useful for writing are Sharpie pens, and these come in different nib sizes, and these are permanent pens. So this one you can see has a fine tip. And this one has a much broader tip. And they are quite different to these Sharpie poster paint pens. Difficult to get hold of in the UK, but there are very similar products on the market. These are paint pens. They need a good shake before you use them. They come in really, really vibrant colours, and one of the advantages of these is that they will write on top of paints. If I just go back to this one and show you, and they keep their colour on top of paints. These pens will write on virtually anything. And they also come in the handy colours, of course, of black and white. Great for doodling and adding colour to pages as well. And this is a white gel pen. And this is also really good for doodling and just adding little bits of extra white detail on your pages. Let's have a look at rubber stamps. Rubber stamps are a bit of an obsession of mine. They're so versatile when used in art journaling. You can use them with inks and with paints. They can be your background, they can be your feature images, just very, very versatile. Some sets of rubber stamps like this are very, very useful for your backgrounds. These are Tim Holtz from his Stampers Anonymous collection, and really good for adding texture. They're supposed to be added to acrylic blocks, but often I don't if I'm just putting something on a page. Here I'll just show you this with a Stays On ink pad, but you will see me using this one later on in this DVD using paints. And things like that's really good for adding detail and interest to your pages. But also you have things like this. These are by Stampotique, and these are great for adding as a feature image to your page, which you can then colour in, cut out and add to your page. There's lots of possibilities with rubber stamps. See, it is there now. And even down to things like this that you will find in an office supply shop, something like that. Really useful and a nice way to add some detail to your page and to remind yourself what date you did it on. There are lots of different ink pads on the market. I won't explain them all now, but when you see me using them throughout the DVD, I will explain to you what I'm using. Now, on to crayons and pastels. Things that add extra colour to your pages on top of your acrylic paints are really useful and also really good fun to play with. These are water-soluble wax crayons by Neocolor. These are the Neocolor 2s. And you can add these on top of acrylic paints, build up colour in your pages. But as they're water-soluble, you can also use them entirely for creating a background. And one of the good things you can do with these, because they are water soluble, they will react to the moisture in a baby wipe. So you can scribble a bit of your background, and that's a way of blending it in. So they're great for making backgrounds, but also good for adding lots of extra colour to your page. These are oil pastels, and another great way of adding extra colour to the page. And these are often the bits that I do last on a page when I want to build up some extra colour or add little bits of a feature here and there, highlight bits, and they are super soft and really smudgy. And you can see there's lovely strong colours. I often use crayons or pastels around the edge of an image on my pages, as it really helps to bed the image into the page and can create a glow of colour around the image. But something else I help to do that as well is a charcoal pencil. So I might use charcoal around the edge of an image such as this, and just taking in a tiny bit, and it just helps to add a little bit of shade. And this is a blending stub. You can just go around the edge of that too, and it just helps to make the image look like it was meant to be there, and stops it from looking like it's floating on the page. So it's useful for adding a little bit of shade around an image. One person's junk is another person's treasure, and I have found that it's best to train all of my family not to throw anything away until they've checked with me, because everything has a use in art journaling. Now, as you can see, I've got a lot of bottle lids, but they're all useful because they're all different sizes, and a collection of different sizes of bottle lids is a really fantastic way of adding extra stamping to your pages right up to this larger size. Any old gift cards or credit cards are great for spreading paint, adding marks on the page. Now, children's discarded toys. This actually came from a child's painting set that my children have now grown out of, but really useful, and add some nice stripes to my pages. This, of course, is from my children's toy collection. But you can see it's got lots of paint on now. It's been very well used. Empty cotton reels are great for making tracks or circles. This is the waste from sequins, sometimes called punchinella. Lovely for sponging through, makes some great shapes on the page. And I have some things that I haven't used yet, but I am just certain have a use. This is an empty ribbon roll, and I'm fairly certain that could have a good use in art journaling. Finally, some other things you might find useful in your art journaling, things such as vintage text, old sheet music, anything's useful, stickers, washi tape. If you haven't already, start collecting now. Now you're looking at a blank page in your beautiful journal and you're wondering where to begin, because sometimes the glare from a white page can be enough to put you off even starting. So let's begin, let's get some colour on those pages. You might be looking at a blank page in your journal and wondering where to begin, and a good place to begin would be adding a layer of gesso to the page. Gesso comes in white and in black, or a grey, and this acts as a primer on the page and it gives a little bit of tooth. It will also help to stop ink seeping through to the other side, especially if you've got completed work on the other side. Paints tend to blend easier on top of gesso as well because it acts as a barrier between the paint and the page. You can put it on with a brush or a tool like this. And we just need to get a good coating on the page. And this is quick drying, and I'll just show you with this as well. And you just want to cover the whole page, give it a good base for painting on. And you can also put it on a little bit thicker in areas and use it just to add a little bit of texture. That gesso now needs leaving to dry. You might like to gesso a few pages altogether, that way when they're dry you've always got a page ready to go. Let's move on to colour. I'm going to prepare a colour wheel. It might seem like a dull step to do this, but it's very, very useful to do one of these for every set of paints that you own. This is how you understand how your paints work with each other. And here's some that I've already done for the paints that I have. And by doing this I can see the full range of colours that I can use. So you can buy colour wheels in the shops, but it doesn't show you how your paints work together. So we're going to do one on a tag. If I do one on a tag here, that means I can hang that inside my journal and pull it out for easy reference. I'm going to start with 3 primary colours. And I'm just going to put these in a triangular shape. So those are my 3 base colours. But now I'm going to fill these in to make a circle. So I'm going to take a little bit of red, I'm going to add bits of yellow, and if I add a little bit more red, so now we can see we've gone from a red to a dark orange, light orange, and onto a yellow. I'm going to do the same again, but take it from yellow round to the blue. Quite a bit of yellow, tiny bit of blue, a little bit more blue, should make a darker green, and now I'm going to work from the red to the blue. So I've got a tiny bit of blue, there. Now you can see the shades that you can create from your 3 primary colours, and also this is what will happen when you start to layer them up on the page. Now I'm going to do that again, but with slightly different shades. Sometimes you get surprising results. So I've kept the yellow, but I've gone for a slightly different version of the red. I've gone for a hot pink, and instead of blue, I've gone for a teal colour. And I'm just going to repeat the process. Now I'm taking the pink and I'm going to add a tiny bit of the teal. You can see this makes quite a strong purple colour. Now to complete the circle, I'm taking the yellow, putting a tiny bit. That makes quite a vivid green. There, so now I can see that I have that whole range of colours and that whole range of colours just from those 5 paints. That's the colour wheel completed. We're now going to have a look at a shade card, as this will show us just how many shades of colour we can get from one set of paints. I'm going to start at one end with the original colour. I'm working in very small amounts of paint. And I'm going to add a touch of white, and notice I'm using a baby wipe here, and a touch more white, and each time that brings it just a shade lighter. It will get lighter and lighter till you have the very lightest of pinks at the far end. But another useful thing to do is start again with your original colour, but this time I'm going to add a Titan buff colour, and this gives a slightly different shade. And you can keep that going all the way to the end of the card, and then you will end up with something like that, and that shows you all of the shades and tones you can get from your original colours. Let's have a look at how we use these shade cards and colour wheels in actual pages in a journal. Here's a page I've completed using all of these shades, as you can see on here. One of the nice things about doing a page just in one shade is that it's easier to blend. All of these colours blend really easily together, and you can see I've managed to get darker areas here on the page and here, and I've also managed to build up lighter areas using plenty of white like this. I've also gone in back with the darker shades here to create extra texture, and by using all of these different shades on one page you can still get real depth and texture on your page. Later on in this DVD we'll be looking at how to add these extra bits of texture to your background, and in DVD 2 we'll be looking at how to add images and wording to your page. We've looked at a page that uses just one colour on the colour wheel. Now we're going to look at a page that uses 2 or 3 neighbouring colours on the colour wheel, and on this page I've gone from hot pinks right round to the yellows. These are neighbouring colours, and neighbouring colours work really well together, and I also find them really easy to blend together on the page. You can see I've got my light areas here, plenty of yellow, right through to my darker areas and hot pinks and oranges here, and I've used the darker colours to build up some depth and texture to the page. At one time, red and pink, we were told, never went together. Don't wear red and pink. But actually, red and pink work really well together. It's all about knowing the rules of colour and then being brave enough to break them. We've looked at a page that uses one colour on the colour wheel. We've looked at a page that uses neighbouring colours. And this time, we're going to look at this page here. This page uses opposite colours on the colour wheel. So pink to green. And here you can see I've got this lovely hot pink down to the green. This is slightly harder to blend the colours. You need plenty of white in the middle to blend those colours in. And look at how here I've used pink as a highlight on the green. And on the pink, I've used green as a highlight. And that's opposite colours on the colour wheel. We've looked at a page that uses one colour on the wheel, neighbouring colours. We've looked at opposite colours. Now here's a page that's using a triangle. So taking shades of blue, pink and yellow. We see here blue, the pinks and the yellow. This combination, a triangle, always gives really vibrant results on the page. You can see as well within each area I've still built up tones of colour. So I've got my darker blues in here. I've got even gone in there with bits of orange to darken, brighten up the yellow a bit. And then I've gone in with highlights of pink here as well. But using a triangle of colour will get you really vibrant results every time. By now we've prepared our pages with gesso, we've completed our colour wheel and shade cards, and we're ready to add some colour to the pages. There are as many ways of adding colour as you can think of. You can use brushes, credit cards, fingers, baby wipes, anything goes, but I'm going to show you some of my favourite ways. I've chosen my colours already and I've gone for neighbouring colours on my colour wheel. So you can see I've got my yellow, my orange and my pink. And I've also added some pale pink as well. I may use a bit of the pale pink. I've got my white and black ready because these are really good accent colours. And also I'm going to add a touch of gold metallic. Other things that you might need for creating a page like this. I'm using this rubber stamp. This is just a texture rubber stamp. And some of my useful junk, and here I've got various collection of bottle lids. I collect as many as I can, knowing then they fit inside each other, and I can stamp circles within circles. And then an old credit or gift card, and that's going to add some texture as well to the page. I've got a piece of paper underneath my journal page. This means I can go over the edge, and I'm also going to use this for stamping extra bits just to make sure I've got the consistency of paint right. And I'm starting with a baby wipe. I'm going to take some pink and spread it really quickly on the page. This just gives me a good base colour to start with. And the moisture in the baby wipe really helps this paint to spread quickly and thinly, giving it just a good light base of colour. And that's it, that's my first layer of colour. Now I want to add much more to that, and I'm going to use my hands and the paints. White is a really useful blending colour, so I'm probably going to need quite a lot of white. And I'm starting with this very small amount of paint. Too much paint becomes very difficult to spread and spread evenly, and difficult to blend because you're moving too much paint around on the page. And now I'm going to go in with a little bit of white. And I'm spreading this vertically and horizontally, just so it's thinning the paint out. Now this pink's a really strong colour, so I'm just taking a small amount, and if I want it to spread a bit further, I can go in with some white. And it doesn't matter at this stage if it's looking patchy. Remember, this is just the base. We're going to add plenty to this, lots of texture with stamping, bottle lids. I'm going to add a photo, so I'll be building on this. Now, because we've already got our base layer of pink, if you miss some bits with your fingers, like here, then it doesn't matter because the pink will show through on the baby white layer. I'm just going to keep going now until I've filled the page. I can always go in later and add extra colour or extra layers if I feel there's gaps or bits missing. You have to be careful not to rub too hard because you might rub holes in the page. Okay, so I'm going to leave that finger painted layer there. That's enough as a base layer. I'm going to go in and add some more to that now. Now I'm taking my rubber stamp. What I want to do is add some darker paint in the lighter areas, and where I've got a darker area I will add some lighter colour. So here where I've got a darker layer of pink, then I could add some light pink. Now it's okay to use acrylic paints on your rubber stamps as long as you clean it off straight away. Once it's dried, you will have trouble getting paint off the stamp. If you do it fairly soon, and just a baby wipe to get the paint straight off, and it's okay to do that. So there's a bit of the light. I'm going to add some darker colour now. You can see because I only want a small amount of paint, I'm putting that on with my finger. And I can go on a lighter area with a darker colour. And I'm just building up the texture in the background. Now I have a photo that I'm going to add to this page, and the photo will sit roughly there. So I'm building up texture around that. And sometimes you can just stamp it twice. Give that a quick wipe so it doesn't dry. Now I'm going to use my credit card to add some extra colour, and I find that lines work best vertical or horizontal, but not really diagonal. Diagonal is confusing to the eye, so I'm going to stick to some horizontal lines and vertical lines. I might add a touch of yellow. It doesn't matter now how much you add to this page, as long as you stick to the same colour palette. Otherwise it might get a bit confusing. Now sometimes I just like to try it here to make sure I haven't overloaded. I haven't got too much paint on. I'm just building in texture around where I want my photograph to be. And sometimes you can also place it down and scrape it as well for an extra bit of texture, different look. And you have to be quite brave to go in with the black. But black does tend to make the rest of the colours really pop. Once you add black you get such a good contrast. just testing it to make sure I haven't overloaded that. Now I'm going to stamp some circles with my bottle lids, and I'm going to stamp some in black. It's just quite a striking feature. And there's two ways of doing this. If you have a large pot of paint, you can take the bottle lid straight in. If you haven't, you can just paint it on. And painting it on does give you quite good control of how much paint you have on your lid. Now again, I know my photo is going to be here, so I'm building up just some features around the page. Now this is sort of random, and I am thinking about where to place it, and sometimes you might see me put it here and then just move it, and I'm visualizing how it might look. I don't want to overdo these circles. They're not going to be the main feature on the page. Sometimes taking one just off the edge of the page as well is a nice touch. Now I'm going to take some of my metallic paint. I'm going to put this straight on the craft mat. And because I've collected my bottle lids, I know that that one fits inside that one. I'm going to add some metallic circles inside there. I like a touch of metallics, it gives a real lift to the page. And now while I've got my metallic paint out, I'm going to add some extra credit card lines, and again I'm going to keep these horizontal and maybe some vertical, not diagonal. Now, as a final touch, I'm going to add some splats of paint. Now, a fine brush, a small brush, gives you a smaller splat. We don't want to obliterate the whole page. I've got a small amount of black, and I'm just going to add a touch of water. Now, before I do this, I want to check I've got the right consistency to splat. If I splat and hit against my finger, I'm going to get a fine spray, but I don't want a fine spray, I want a run of dots, so I'm going to try it just giving it a good flick like this. And that looks the good consistency. You do need to make sure that you cover any other pages up before you give it an enthusiastic splat. And I'm going to do the same again, but with the white. And this is all just building up lots of texture and depth in the background. I'm just going to check my consistency, cover up my area, and add some white. This page isn't finished yet. Remember, this is just a background. There's plenty more that I would like to add to this page. There is a second DVD called Art Journaling. There are no mistakes in art, and in that DVD we'll be adding some stamping, some doodling, oil pastels and a photograph to that page. For this page I'm going to be mostly using a collection of paintbrushes, and I'm going to use mainly a teal colour, but I might build in some extra yellow, so going through the greens to the yellow. As you can see here, I've got my paints ready. I've got my white and black paint ready, because I might like to add some extra highlights with those. I'm going to use some spray ink. This one's got added mica for a bit of shimmer. I've got my useful junk. I've got a piece of Lego this time, as well as bottle lids and the credit card. And I'm also going to be using a stencil, mine's well used as you can see, and a piece of sponge. So I'm going to be adding colour and texture through the stencil with a sponge. Now this is the page that I gessoed earlier. As you can see, there's the texture. Now to blend these colours, the white is very, very useful. So I'm going to go in first of all with some white. And a tiny bit. Find too much paint on the brush becomes really very difficult to blend, so I keep to a minimum amount of paint because I can always add more. And I'm building in little patches of darker and lighter areas, and you can see now how it's starting to pick up the pattern that was put in the gesso earlier. Now acrylic paint and water doesn't really go particularly well together for this sort of thing, so keep a baby wipe to hand. Now at this point I'm going to add a touch of yellow, and I'm using white again to blend it in. And I want to fill the whole page this way, building up areas of light and dark, building just touches of other colour. Now at any point if you get too much paint or it's too dark, go back in with some white. You can just blend that in a bit more. A slightly different yellow, just for a bit of variety. I think most pages go through a stage where they don't look great, as there is that point where you actually want to throw it in the bin. But work on it, keep working on it, as you can usually pull it round. Where I see some lighter areas like there, I might just add a touch of yellow to that area. These paints are semi-translucent, so they layer up. Means they let other colours shine through from underneath. okay to have a few brush strokes like that. That all adds to the texture. You can always go back over areas, especially once they've dried a bit. You can go back over some lighter colour. Here, look, you can see where it's really picking up the texture that we put in the gesso earlier. See, every time I'm starting with white, and then I can blend other colours into it. So what I'm aiming for here, I want some lighter areas and some darker areas, and just with touches of yellow to brighten it a little bit. Now, acrylic paints are very forgiving, so if there's bits that you're not happy with, you can just go back in and go over it. It's one of the great things about working in acrylics. Just going to go over that corner a bit. It's looking a little bit rough. Now I'm going to let that paint dry before I add any more detail. I'm going to add some texture and dimension to the page now. So I'm taking my stencil and an old sponge. Because I've already got some texture here and in this corner with the gesso, I'm going to come in from this corner and I'm sticking to the same colour palette. And I might first of all use some white. And I'm just going to sponge through. I don't want this to look too regimented, so I'm just going in at certain parts out, picking out sort of a random pattern there. And I'll build some into this corner as well, so I'll make it just slightly different now. I'm just going to take it up the side here, still with some of the white. You don't want too much paint on, because if you have too much paint on a stencil, of course it goes underneath the stencil and makes a splotch. So keeping that paint to a minimum. And I might just put a little bit in here as well. I'm looking at where there's a dark area here, and that might be nice just lightened a little bit. So we're building in some pattern, but I'm going to add some of the teal. Now the teal itself is probably just a little bit too dark, so I'm just going to lighten it a little bit with some white. And I'm going to put this on. I don't want it in exactly the same place, I just want it to be overlapping. And this is how you start to build in some depth. Again, I've got the paint to an absolute minimum on here. I don't want it splodging, so I'm just lightly sponging. And it's just overlapping a little bit. And in my centre pattern there, down to the bottom corner here. So it overlaps the white that I've already stenciled on. Now there's lots of other things we can use to add still some more pattern and texture to the page, so I've got my credit card again. And I'm still going to work on horizontal and vertical lines. And where there's a slightly darker area here, I can put in a scrape, and here. Now I'm going to take some of my bottle lids. Now I've already got circles on the page, and this is a nice way to highlight some of the circles, to find a lid that will stamp some the same around the edge. That's blotched a bit, that's okay. Remember, there's no mistakes in art, it's fine. Always just test it on a piece of paper to make sure. And again, I'm going to introduce some metallic paint, and I have my smaller bottle lid. Because this one as well can be used as a highlight. Also fits them just inside. You might want to just add a random couple around in the opposite corners to build up some matching texture in the corners. Now, a piece of Lego is another good way of stamping some texture onto the page. So I can just control the amount of paint that's going on there. Now again, I don't want a set block of all those, so I'm just going in, painting an area of that. building up a little bit more colour, and you might be able to get it to print twice. I'm going to add some spray inks next, but I'm just going to leave that paint to dry before I spray any ink. I've chosen a gold mica, so it needs a good shake so that all the mica mixes in. And I've chosen a lime with some mica and a matte yellow. There's a bit of blue in here I'm going to use. This is one that I've mixed up with a bit of water, so it's not such a strong colour. So this is ink with mica and some water. It will give me a lighter blue. Things that you need to have ready is a kitchen roll. And once I've sprayed, I'm going to tip the book upwards so that the spray runs down. So I need to have something at the bottom of the page ready to catch the drips. Now you'll notice I'm sticking to the same colour palette here, so I'm still sticking to my blues and greens. I don't want to introduce any new colours. And first of all, I'm just going to add some of the matte yellow. Now all we need to do is tip the book up and let the ink run down. I'm going to take my kitchen roll and just roll it over. And now you'll see that just leaves nice lightly coloured extra bits of colour. Now I'm going to take the green. This has got the added mica. And I'm going to add some green in this area here because it's already showing a little bit green. I'm going to allow that to run down. Now the longer you leave the ink there, the stronger the colour will be. I don't particularly want that to be too strong, so I'm going to blot it. And I'm going to add a bit of the blue. I might add that in this area here. Allow that to run down. Now you can let it run right to the bottom, or you could stop it there. Put it there like that. And another nice way to use these, and this is gold. So this gold is going to pick out the gold that I've already got on the page. And I'm going to take that out of there and just add. And I'm going to let this dry naturally. And that will just leave some really nice gold shimmery splats on the page. Probably one of the most unusual tools I use for spreading paint is an old credit card. But it's great for adding layers of paint to a page. There's no gesso on this page. There's enough layers of paint on this page to protect any underneath pages from the inks. So I have no gesso. I'm going straight on with my lightest colour. Now again, I'm going to choose neighbouring colours from the colour wheel. So I'm using mainly pinks, and then I'm going to add a bit of yellow, which will also give us the in-between oranges here. You'll see I'm going to mix different paints here, all acrylics, but different manufacturers. This is the lightest layer going on. I'm just taking this randomly to cover the page. And this gives a really thin base layer. Applying pressure on the credit card, and it takes the paint across with it. And it doesn't matter if there's some gaps because we're going to fill those in with other layers of paint. As you can see, I've put paper in between my pages again. This protects pages underneath. It means I can go over the edge. that's enough for the first layer. Now, because this layer is so thinly spread, it's going to dry really quickly. So I can now go straight on with my next layer. I'm going to take a dark shade of pink. And I'm going to spread this. And I'm going to go in all directions, and I want to leave some gaps in between. I want some of this paler pink to shine through. Now I've gone in all directions, and I've deliberately left some gaps here because we're still going to add some more layers. Now I'm going to add some of this. This is a golden fluid acrylic. It's got the consistency of single cream. You can pour it straight on. And this is a very strong colour, but once this is gone, it's going to be very, very bright, but then we're going to take it back with some more layers. Again, going in all directions. Now I know that this page in the next DVD is going to have a border added all around the edge, so I don't need to worry too much about having all the borders filled, because that's going to be covered, and these gaps here I'm going to fill in with some yellow, and the yellow is a nice contrast, and it will start to go slightly orangey as we layer it up. Now I'm looking now for gaps that might just take a little bit of yellow. Anytime, of course, you can go in with your hands to blend things a little bit. So I'm looking for lighter areas. Now I've got most of the blank areas filled in, and that's now looking really, really strong, that colour. So there's a way that we're going to knock that back a little bit. I'm going to use a mixture. So I'm adding a Titan buff, which is a cream colour, and some white. And this is an interference red, and this is a lovely shimmer. So I've got all three there. I'm going back to the credit card. I'm going to take it all over, and it's going to knock that colour right back, because that's a really strong colour. And that's all over with the credit card, takes it right back, but you can see all of these layers shining through. Now, because this paint's going on so thinly, it's possible then to go straight on with a stencil. And now here I've got a flower stencil and a sponge. I'm just going to go in on certain areas, highlight some areas, stamp through to create some flowers, and then I'm going to spray over them. picking out another corner here. Remember, there's a border going right round the edge, so I don't need to worry too much about the edge. This is quite a nice dark area here, so that's going to work well with some white over. And I might just do a little bit down here as well. I'm going to add some mica spray inks now, and I'm going to concentrate on areas that have the white stenciling. So I'm picking out similar colours again, so I've got hot pink and burnt orange, because these are the colours that I've already got on my page, and these need a good shake. Sometimes you can see if the mica's settled. And tip it up again. I'm just blotting over that. And you see how the colour starts to settle around where the white stenciling was. And this time I'm going to go in with some orange. Just let that dribble down a bit. It's always useful to tip it up against something just in case it dribbles off the edge. And you can see the difference between the stenciled areas that have been sprayed and that haven't. So I'll have pink up here again. And I'm going to go in this area with some of the orange. I'm now going to leave this page to dry. At this stage it looks really quite messy, but I'm going to add lots more to it. Remember, this isn't the finished page, this is the backing, and I'm going to add lots of images and a border, and it will all start to come together. For this page I'm going to be using the ink sprays, and I'll add some touches of paint later on. Now, ink sprays will seep through to the other side, so you need to make sure that your page has a really good layer of gesso, or do as I'm doing here and use a cheap sketchbook, and I tend to work just on one side of the page, so I don't worry about gesso in this book. But if you're using a journal that you've already completed pages, make sure you get a good layer. I'm going to start with some sky blue, and I'm putting a bit on my craft map there, and I'm going to pick a bit of that with this baby wipe, and I'm just going to get some areas, leaving plenty of white, but just some areas of colour to start with, like that. And I'm leaving plenty of white there. Now, it's important now with the ink sprays to either leave it to dry properly or give it a quick blast with a heat gun as soon as I spray on top of that, otherwise it's going to start to bleed into the layer I've put there. So I'm just going to give this a quick blast with a heat gun. And now I'm going to take this stencil here, and I'm going to spray through in this corner, and then immediately I'm going to turn it over and have the reverse there. So I'm taking the same blue, because this has gone on thinner, this is going to create different shades of blue on the page. And I'll get the reverse image there, and I'm just going to roll down that. Make sure that prints. And do the same there. Now, there's still a lot of white showing in edges, but again, there's going to be images on top of this, so I'm not too worried about that now. I'm just going to, again, give it a quick dry. Now I want to add another colour to this, and just to look back again at the colour wheel, opposite to blue is orange. So if I wanted to add one more colour to this, then orange is a really good colour. It's going to work really well if I just splat that across. So you need to cover up again any surrounding areas. How that orange stands out really nicely against the blue. And I'll just leave that for a moment so the colour is a little bit stronger. And then just blot it. Okay, so that's the base layer of inks, but now I can go in again with some paints and just add some features to the page using credit cards and Lego and anything else that you've got that would make a stamp on the page. This is all just to add extra interest to your page. So again, this is horizontal and vertical lines. That's almost framing the corners there. And a couple of scrapes. And we'll go back in again with a little bit of the gold. As metallics always just gives things a bit of a lift, I think. Now when you use something like this, you need to make sure that you get just the right consistency of paint on there. Otherwise you find not only do you get the manufacturer's name printed on your journal page, it prints it backwards, and that's not something we really want to see. You can always test it on a piece of paper first if you're not sure. I'm not covering all of the circles because I don't want to set block. I just want some bits to show. And now a touch of black, because that really makes the rest of the colours look really vibrant. Now you can see I'm just wondering now where to place this. I'm trying to visualise it in my head. A little bit extra there. See how nice that black is against the blue, it really makes it stand out. Now, because I've still got a bit of black left on my craft mat, I'm going to give it another splat. I'm just going to check the consistency, make sure it's right for splatting. And at that point, I'm going to leave that page how it is. So now when you've finished, remember this is just a background, I've got some images I want to add to this, and once the images are on I'll be adding a little bit more texture as well, but that's the point where I'm going to leave it today. So there you have a few ways of getting some colour onto your pages. Once you've got a few pages prepared, you'll probably want to add some collage elements and eventually start to journal. So if you want to know more, take a look at art journaling. There are no mistakes in art. In this DVD you will find ideas and tips for adding images to a page, including digital collage images and rubber stamped images, how to add collage borders to a page, as well as hints for grounding images and unifying your pages. Finally, we'll be looking at how and where to journal on a page, including ideas for daily journaling. That's all we've got time for now. I hope to see you in art journaling. There are no mistakes in art. Thanks for watching. Bye.